If you know me, you know that I love Adult Swim. It's basically shaped me into who I am as a person. And if you don't know me, what are you doing here? I did not invite you. Please leave my house. That was weird. I don't know who that guy was. Anyways, yeah, I love me some Adult Swim, and one of my favorite aspects of the channel has got to be their yearly April Fool's Day pranks. Ever since 2004, they've been providing us with non-stop pranks and goofs during the block starting at midnight on April 1st, and these have ranged from wacky visual gags to complete network redesigns and takeovers. Of course, things return to normalcy for the remaining 364 days of the year, or at least normalcy in regards to Adult Swim. But for one night every year, people have been tuning in just to see what the network will pull off that year. It's sort of turned into a tradition for many people, myself included. In fact, I've been hosting shindigs for a while now to celebrate and watch the pranks live every year at midnight, kind of like a New Year's Eve party. And not to brag or anything, but my parties can get pretty crazy with the rowdy so-and-sos that I invite.
Hey, don't have too much fun without me in there, you stallion.
It seems as if the stars have aligned tonight. Given that it is March 31st and I'm having this party, and for the first time I'm hosting a viewing audience, and tonight will mark the 20th year of Adult Swim's April Fool's Day stunts, I figured that now would be the best time to look back at all the previous pranks that were pulled off, and for the heck of it, I'm gonna rank it based on how I feel about each prank. This is mostly going to be through the bias of my own eyes, but I'll try and give you all an idea of how I'm going through this. I want to look at these stunts from a few different perspectives. First off, is it funny? Second, is it special? And third, is it unexpected? And despite me setting up those three guidelines, just know that they are not set in stone as to the prank's placements on the ranking. They'll be important, but in all honesty, the biggest factor of any of these pranks is my personal enjoyment factor. Also, while this isn't a case for a majority, sometimes Adult Swim will be sneaky and do two pranks in one year. One on April 1st at midnight, and another on April 1st between 8 and 11:59 p.m. I'm planning on making sure I separate these come time for the ranking, so if a year has two pranks on two separate days, they will be ranked separately. And finally, be sure to stay tuned until the end of the video, when, for your eyes only, we will exclusively be premiering the Adult Swim prank live during this very video. And since I still have some preparations to make for that, and so that I can finish setting up this party, I may have to step away for a section or two, in which case I'll just coerce one of these party guests into talking about it. And if you're wondering how, don't worry, I have the perfect plan. Let's just say there's no such thing as free coat check at my house. Anyways, without further distractions, let's get started with... I don't know how many people watching this remember what Adult Swim was like in the very early days, but it was much, much different than it is today. And I mean that in more ways than one. I'd say that the two biggest differences would be back in 2004, Adult Swim only ran from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., effectively only having slots for 6 22-minute shows, with another 6 slots for reruns. And the other biggest difference would have to be that they actually aired anime during the week instead of just relegating it to Saturday nights. So, on the night of March 31st, with reruns of Family Guy, Futurama, Witch Hunter Robin, Inuyasha, The Big O, and Cowboy Bebop, Adult Swim executed their first April Fool's Day joke. And what did they have in mind? Mustaches. Every rerun they would air that night would have fake mustaches randomly drawn on not only the characters, but also random objects in the background. Not just the same old mustache every time either, they would go the extra step, like giving Stewie a top hat and Inuyasha spectacles. And for anyone that didn't like that, and just wanted to see the episodes aired in their normal states, the Chad Adult Swim aired the exact same episodes the next day in their original mustache-free states. Despite the following 18 years only ramping up in what they deliver, I actually really like this prank. Despite how silly it is, it's also very low-key. They don't spam the episodes with mustaches, they're actually surprisingly held back with them. While this may seem like a downside on paper, you have to remember that this is their first attempt at one of these, so it was never going all out. Even better, while this may or may not be intentional, I think that their restraint here actually makes it an even better prank that you really have to pay attention to in order to appreciate it. You have to remember that this was 2004, and while forum pages were around and some even talked about what had happened, the internet was nowhere near as imperative as it is nowadays to spread these special events. Honestly, the best way is word of mouth, and because of that, it's sort of cool to think back and maybe imagine some high school and college kids watching this one random night and explaining it to everyone, only for a few people to fully understand what they're talking about. Sort of like a secret language of sorts, and I think that's pretty neat. Another thing to keep in mind is that with all of these shows that were affected by the prank, while they were aired on Adult Swim, the network themselves didn't own or create any of the programs. It sort of set a standard for future pranks that no show is safe from our clutches, and I think that that was a very smart choice, whether that be intentional or otherwise. This one is going on the top of the list for now, but because it's the first one, that means it's also going on the bottom. I'm both proud and disappointed. Oh, and side note, you're going to be seeing this a few times, but unfortunately a lot of this is either going to be very low quality, or sometimes you may just see static images, since they weren't really extremely well documented. Luckily, the airings for Futurama, Family Guy, Witch Hunter Robin, and Cowboy Bebop featuring the mustache pranks have been found, while Inuyasha and Big O episodes are still missing, as well as most of the bumps surrounding that night. Big thanks to the Swimpedia team for helping me locate some of these. I mentioned them in previous videos, and they continue to play a big role in these kinds of videos, so make sure to check them out on Twitter and join their Discord if you want to know more about this. "2005 is when they started a trend that they are still sticking to this day. Stealth premiere sneak peeks. Albeit this one is a very special case that requires a bit more context. Okay, so basically between 2003 and 2004, Squidbillies was being hyped up as this big new show coming from the network very soon. After some radio silence and jokes, they showed off some footage of Squidbillies at San Diego Comic-Con 2004, and announced that the pilot would premiere on November 7th, 2004. Come that time, they were hyping up the premiere immensely, only for them to stealth premiere another one of their shows, Perfect Hair Forever, followed by a special presentation afterwards featuring Space Ghost, Meatwad, Sharko from C-Lab 2021, and Early Kyler in his first ever speaking role. They then later clarified that they needed more time on the pilot and that it wasn't ready. And now we've come full circle to March 31st, 2005, when they aired a bump of someone saying that Squidbillies is a lie, followed by a rough cut of the pilot episode, which was littered with rough doodles where finished scenes were not done. They then clarified that there was still some more work to be done on the show, and that it would be set to premiere in September of 2005. It premiered in October. Damn it! But yes, this unfinished pilot, later dubbed the Rough Cut pilot, was followed up by a rerun of the talk show that I had mentioned earlier, and was never aired again. I was also told from trusted sources that they re-aired the pilot of Perfect Hair Forever at 3 AM that day with the mustaches from the year before, but unfortunately I found absolutely no proof of this whatsoever, so I am gonna omit that from the list. This is a pretty cool stunt for something that was built up for years and years, and it's cool that instead of airing the actual pilot, they aired a rough cut that was primarily just doodles. I think that's a nice touch, but compared to the mustache prank, while it was somewhat unexpected, looking back it wasn't very funny or special. They've been stealth premiering pilots from the inception of the network, so for something like that to work as an April Fool's Day stunt, there needs to be some additional content, whether that be wraparounds or the actual pilot edited in theme with the prank. While a rough cut has some humor to it, especially given that the pilot was probably already near almost completion at that point, It's still pretty weak, given that the whole prank is basically just 11 minutes in one night. It feels weird saying this, given that it's only the third stunt they pulled, but in 2006, they went back to their roots for a good old-fashioned prank. It's a good thing too, since they were sort of backed into a corner for the year. For starters, in 2006, they still didn't air every single night, only getting Saturday through Thursday, meaning that Fridays were unusable to them. And since March 31st fell on a Friday, they had to move their prank to Saturday, April 1st. Second, while they still aired anime throughout the week, they started transitioning to anime-exclusive days on Saturdays. And third, it just so happens that Daylight Savings Time fell on April 2nd in 2006, meaning that they had an hour less than usual for their block. So what did they do? Well, for starters, because it was a shortened schedule, they just decided to say fuck it, and instead of airing all anime like it was scheduled to, they aired the most obscure stuff that they had the license to air, including Mr. T and Chuck Norris Karate Commandos. But if you thought that was it, you are wrong, because they did air some anime that night in the form of a new episode of Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex Second Gig at 11:30 p.m., and a rerun of Full Metal Alchemist at midnight. Except something was a little off with these airings.
He's a phony, he's just using alchemy.
Sporadically throughout both episodes, there are random fart noises throughout. It's not just all random all the time either. Whoever came up with this prank must have combed through the episodes, because some of these are perfect timing with character movements, reactions, and dialogue. It's kind of insane. And yet, like the mustache prank, it revels in its ability to be subtle. In fact, I'd say it's even more so than the mustaches themselves, since there's no visual indicators on screen, so it gets the viewers even more confused as to if what they just watched was actually real or not. Plus, farts are just objectively funny, and I'm tired of pretending that they're not. Honestly, the only downside to this whole thing is that the episode they aired of Ghost in the Shell was a new one, so the farts were a bit of an annoyance to fans. But again, the Giga Chads over at Adult Swim decided to rerun the episode after the Full Metal Alchemist fart airing, completely removing any farts. That is a really cool move on their part, and I'm glad that they were able to have fun with the show, while also respecting the fans and not screwing them over by having them wait to see a new episode. I mean, can you imagine if they tried to pull something like that off? I don't know if you just noticed the subtle hint I just gave you. Honestly, if you missed it, I can completely understand. But here we have one of the few years where they decided to go big and do 2 April Fool's Day stunts on both March 31st and April 1st. Like I mentioned, I'm going to be splitting these up into their own separate pranks that will be ranked individually. So starting with March 31st in 2007, Perfect Hair Forever came back out of nowhere with a brand new episode at midnight. That's pretty cool, I guess. I've never been the biggest fan of Perfect Hair Forever, so this is kind of whatever to me, but I'm happy to report that it didn't just stop with that. They then aired the remaining episodes of Perfect Hair Forever, except this time with a twist. Not only did they air the episodes in reverse order, but they also digitally degraded the episodes for a VHS filter effect, and added subtitles that contained broken English, kind of like a bootleg might have. For the most part, the episode's subtitles line up pretty well with what they're actually saying, but at one point the subtitles literally just turned into subtitles for the Aqua Teen episode Revenge of the Mooninites, so absolutely nothing makes sense, and it's hilarious. Finally, in between the episodes, there were bumps of female anime characters in promiscuous poses, with the caption fan service moment, which includes Faye and Haruko from Cowboy Bebop and Fooly Cooly respectively. Honestly, all things considered, this is actually a pretty good prank. If it had just been the new Perfect Hair Forever episode, it'd be kinda lame, but the inclusion of the bootleg marathon afterwards is what saves it from being last place. Still though, I'm not the biggest fan of this show, and the funniest part to me was the part when the subtitles were from a different, exceptionally better show.
So, in the days leading up to Sunday, April 1st, 2007, it was touted that the Colon movie film would be shown in its entirety on TV over a week before its theatrical debut. If you thought this promise of showing the film for free was too good to be true, well, you're partially right. At 10 p.m. that night, the film began, minus the groovy time for a movie time / Mastodon musical intro. I guess they wanted to keep at least one thing a surprise for the film's debut. A few minutes in, however, once it was revealed that the intro of the film is Shake telling a story, the film shrunk down to nano-sized levels at the bottom left of the screen, revealing the normally scheduled episode of Futurama while the film continued to play. What is this, a film for ants? The joke didn't end there, though. Intermittently throughout the broadcast that night, various graphics would pop up on the screen referencing the Colon movie film playing microscopically in the corner, essentially mocking the viewer. Characters from the film would also pop up with text explaining that you were currently watching the Aqua Teen film, but also that you were watching whatever show was on in the background taking up a majority of the screen. These graphics were accompanied by some sick flame animations, which is definitely on brand for Aqua Teen. Some other messages included telling the viewer to go to adultswim.com, the release date of the film, and also to watch the Masters Golf Tournament on CBS. Adult Swim did throw fans somewhat of a lifeline here. Rumor has it if one switched to the second audio channel, usually reserved for Spanish, you could actually hear the film's audio. Unfortunately, Spanish speakers, you were out of luck that night. Lo siento. Despite not being able to really enjoy the film, due to the recognizable look, shape, and color of many of the show's characters, it was definitely possible to make out which villains you might expect to see once the film did come out. Because the Aqua Teen crew worked so hard on Colon movie film, I was curious how Aqua Teen co-creator Dave Willis felt about this prank. I was wondering if he had anything to do with it, and if not, if he was annoyed that elements of the film were spoiled before the big premiere. Upon asking Dave, his initial response was, "How did you get in my house?" After a 30-minute ordeal with the Atlanta PD, Dave's statement is viewable in his charges pressed against me. Dave said, "I had nothing to do with the prank. It was Lazo who told us it was going to happen. But I thought it was funny. Honestly, it was so small, I don't know how anyone would have been able to enjoy it. Thanks, Dave. Also, if you could drop those charges, that would be great." Personally, this is one of my favorite pranks that Adult Swim has done. Of course, I'm biased here being an Aqua Teen fanboy, but I feel like the prank is so incredibly in line with the humor of the show. It didn't feel random or tacked on. It was almost an extension of the show's attitude. Before I head out, I gotta let you know that later that night, the Aqua Teen episode Super Birthday Snake aired. This is basically a glimpse into this Aqua Teen podcaster's life. Aqua Teen was being shown, with Aqua Teen being shown in a small box over that, with Aqua Teen characters popping up on the screen telling you that you were watching the Aqua Teen film, but also Aqua Teen Hunger Force. I feel like Inception owes Adult Swim some money here. If you want to hear me deep dive through the show, or hear exclusive interviews with the cast and crew, check out Dancing is Forbidden. Also, if you could pitch in for my newfound legal fees, that would be great.
'08 was an interesting year for the network in that they kinda did two pranks in one night, albeit one was a bit more interesting than the other. The big event for that night was a night of surprise premieres. From midnight to 2 a.m., they aired sneak peeks at new episodes of ongoing shows, such as Metalocalypse's Death Wedding, Robot Chicken's Tubba Bubba's Now Hubba Bubba, Moral Oral's Grounded, and the first half of Venture Bros' The Doctor is Sin, albeit that one is more of a rough cut. Alongside that, they also showed off pilots of upcoming shows, such as Delocated, Fat Guy Stuck in Internet, The Young Person's Guide to History, and Super Jail, although with that last one it was a fine cut, with things like the intro music being a placeholder. Between these episodes, there would be bumps from TCM's late great Robert Osborne, who would introduce these shows in the same style as he would introduce a TCM movie. Unfortunately, with the exception of Super Jail, all of these bumps are lost media, which is an absolute shame. The second part of their prank was an actual airing of the Aqua Teen movie at 3 a.m. with no edits whatsoever. This one is interesting, as it kind of feels like a bit of a makeup from the previous year's prank, which was unironically hilarious. I'm not even sure if this is classified as part of the prank, since there were bumpers played beforehand telling people they missed the stunt with the premieres, telling them to enjoy the movie. Needless to say though, I think this is a very fun and effective stunt. I still prefer it when there's an actual joke to the prank, like with the farts and the mustaches, but at the very least, this got people hyped up for the 2008 Adult Swim schedule, and I think that's pretty cool. And hey, it's better than nothing. Okay, so I'm going to talk about these next 3 years simultaneously, but trust me when I say that there's a method to my madness. So for their 2009 prank, Adult Swim decided to air the infamous movie The Room. At this point in time, the movie's reputation precedes itself, but for those of you who don't know about this film, it was a 2003 cinematic bomb created by Tommy Wiseau that was often touted as the worst film of all time, only later to become a very popular underground market film, making it the poster boy for cult classic movies. Of course, this is how we see it nowadays. Back in 2009, the movie was still considered to be the worst of the worst for many people. So Adult Swim airing the movie out of the blue with no warning whatsoever, a movie that, at the time, people had either absolutely hated or had never even heard of, at least in my eyes, that's a hilarious prank. From what I've heard from my trusted sources, the movie aired with the sex scenes censored with black boxes, but unfortunately there's no online record of this airing of the movie that I could find, so take that with a grain of salt. They also made sure to have more than just the movie for the prank. They made custom bumpers promoting the Room Marathon during the commercial breaks, and after the movie was finished, they aired the Tim and Eric Awesome Show Great Job episode Tommy, which had premiered earlier that year. In it, they get Tommy Wiseau to not only guest star, but also direct one of their sketches starring Pigman. It's actually a very funny episode, with there being multiple behind-the-scenes shots of Tommy being an awful director to both Tim and Eric, raising a bunch of red flags for their sketch, including him scoring Jessica Alba as the co-star for the sketch, only for it to be some random woman that he's convinced is Jessica Alba.
Let's get out from here.
Who is that?
Come on, guys, let's go. Come on.
Jessica Alba.
Yes, it is. Come on, don't whisper here.
It all culminates in one of the most uncomfortable sketches of the entire show, and given what this show has pulled off, that's saying something. In 2010, they decided to air The Room again, only this time they shifted things up a bit. The movie is basically the same as it aired in 2009 with the black box censors, but instead of airing Tommy afterwards, during the commercial breaks they had bumps of Tommy Wiseau being interviewed by the Space Ghost crew. This is a pretty fun one as they spend their time goofing off or laughing at how bad the film is.
So you've been watching now The Room. What do you think? Maybe you know.
I think it sucks.
Well,
And in 2011, they decided that third time's the charm and aired the movie once again, with this year's gimmick being that after the movie, they premiered Earth Ghost, a shot-for-shot CGI remake of another one of their specials, which featured Space Ghost voice actor George Lowe's day-to-day life, except this time with a 3D CGI model of Space Ghost. You can kinda see why I grouped these three together now, right? Like I said earlier, this is a time before The Room was considered a cult classic film, so in a way, they were just airing a bad movie 3 years in a row. But in doing such, I think it played a very important role in helping the movie reach the cult status it's at nowadays. The first time it aired, it could be seen as a bad movie that they're airing as a prank. The second time, it's kind of like the shock of them doing the exact same prank with the exact same shitty movie. But the third time, that's when it starts to become a tradition. 2011 is definitely the weakest year of the prank, but between 2009 and 2010 as for which year was better, I'm gonna give 2010 the edge, but only ever so slightly, if only because at that point it sort of made a name for itself as a staple of April Fool's Day, and the new Space Ghost bumps they made for that year definitely helped with that.
Doesn't make any sense.
Just weird decisions.
God awful.
Poorly done.
I encourage you to actually see it in a theater.
No, sir.
So.
Thank you.
So just when we thought we were about to experience The Room again for a fourth year in a row, Adult Swim pulled a fast one on us. 2012's April Fool's prank began by playing the opening sequence to The Room before switching over to the Toonami block, which was a huge surprise for a lot of viewers. For those of you who don't know, Toonami is a Saturday night programming block that primarily broadcasts Japanese anime. Prior to its Saturday night format, Toonami used to be a weekday afternoon block on Cartoon Network. Toonami holds great importance as it played a pivotal role in familiarizing American viewers with anime. Personally, I believe that anime would not have gained the popularity it has today had Toonami not paved the way by broadcasting shows such as Bleach, Naruto, One Piece, Dragon Ball, Gundam, Fooly Cooly, Cowboy Bebop, Full Metal Alchemist, Inuyasha, and tons more. The Toonami block had been absent from the network since its cancellation announcement and final airing on September 20th, 2008, until the prank in 2012. Although anime still aired on Adult Swim every Saturday night, the absence of the block's host Tom and the Toonami bumpers was a poignant reminder of what was lost. It was a sorrow time in history. Man, I promised myself I wouldn't cry. The Toonami lineup for the evening of April 1st, 2012 included Dragon Ball Z, Mobile Suit Gundam Wing, Tenchi Muyo, Outlaw Star, The Big O Season 1, Yu Yu Hakusho, Blue Submarine No. 6, Trigun, Astro Boy, and Gigantor. In addition to promoting the recent DVD releases of the series featured that night, Tom also presented a Mass Effect 3 review, which was really cool. However, the April Fool's prank of 2012 left many wondering about its legitimacy. Was it merely a heartless jest by Adult Swim executives to exploit our nostalgia, or was Toonami's return actually in the works? Well, the day after the prank, Adult Swim took to their Twitter page and posted a message that read, "Want it back? Let us know. #BringBackToonami." This sparked an immense response from Toonami supporters who made their voices heard. On April 4th, Adult Swim acknowledged the overwhelming outcry with a tweet that said, #BringBackToonami. We've heard you. Thank you for your passion and interest. Stay tuned. And then Adult Swim made an official announcement via their Twitter and a press release on May 16th, 2012, stating that Toonami would be returning as a weekly Saturday night programming block on May 26th of the same year. And since its relaunch, Toonami has been going strong, and it's hard to believe that over a decade has passed since then. Although I no longer own cable and now watch anime on various streaming platforms, the fond memories of staying up all night as a child to watch Toonami still holds a special place in my heart. I am overjoyed that Toonami continues to be around, introducing more and more people to the world of anime. This is, without a doubt, one of the best Adult Swim pranks.
If there's one thing I will always praise Adult Swim for, it's that even in the earliest of stages, it's always been at the forefront of internet culture. It's something that I'm glad that they've kept up with to this day, with one of their biggest online ventures being the Adult Swim streams, but we'll talk more about those later. Rest in peace. But of course, you can't really talk about the internet without bringing up what is undoubtedly the most important aspect of internet culture to this day. Cats and the internet have gone hand in hand since the earliest days of dial-up modem. It's a fundamental understanding of literally anyone of any age that cats on the internet are funny. I'd say that the peak of internet cats was probably between 2007 and 2012, with such internet celebrities as Keyboard Cat, Grumpy Cat, Oolong Johnson, and Neon Cat. So of course, leave it to Adult Swim to enter the fray fashionably late with their 2013 prank, aptly named Meow Meow. To give you all a basic rundown, after a new episode of Loiter Squad on March 31st at midnight, the following episodes of Eagle Heart, NTSFSD-SUV, Newsreaders, Children's Hospital, and Delocated all had images of cat heads overlaying the heads of some of their live-action actors. In addition, all the bumps played that night were related to cats and cat-like accessories. Most of these were your basic cat nonsense, but some of them actually related to the shows that were being shown that night. This is a pretty cute stunt, and it definitely harkens back to the mustache and fart pranks, but whereas those thrived in their simplicity, I feel as though this one is kind of hampered by it. The bumps are cool, don't get me wrong, but I do wish there was more to the episodes than cat heads. Like, I wish there was some cat noises every once in a while, for example. Even with just the cat heads, it's a little disappointing to see how little effort is sort of put into this prank to make it seem like an actual joke. What I mean by that is, for example, with the mustache prank, not only would you actually see them drawing the mustache on sometimes, but they would also sometimes have a mustache in place that really doesn't make any sense, only for a character to then bob their head in a few seconds later and match up their head with a mustache. See, that's a really funny way to make it seem low effort. Meow Meow seems very low effort, but it's also just because it might just be that. But hey, it's better than nothing. "2014 was an enigma of a year in regards to their stunt, and it's another new episode of Perfect Hair Forever. Oh, goody! Admittedly, this one is a little more funny in hindsight, given that the last new episode of the show was in 2007, exactly 7 years prior to the episode's premiere. And it's touted as a 22-minute special, whereas in reality it's the same exact episode played twice, but with very minimal differences between the two. See, I think that's a really neat touch, definitely knocked it out of the park in regards to the special and unexpected aspect, but I'm sorry to all you Perfect Hair Forever fans. I just don't find this series funny at all. If that was it, I think I'd probably place it towards the bottom, maybe above the Squidbillies fake out. But then they went and did something that I think is really underappreciated and not talked about enough when looking at these pranks. You see, they then aired a coast-to-coast marathon from 12:30 a.m. to 5 a.m. with seemingly random episodes. However, that was not actually the case. The show turned 20 years old in 2014, and to celebrate, on April Fool's Day, Adult Swim decided to air hand-picked episodes that were chosen by the cast and crew who worked on the show. These included the producers, writers, editors, voice actors, and they even got a guy from marketing to choose an episode. Each of these episodes started with a blurb from the person who chose the episode and why they chose that specific episode. I think it's really cool to see the insight into why and how these episodes were selected, as well as get a little backstory as to the people's roles in the show and at the network. My favorite one has to be Keith Crawford saying that he doesn't have a favorite, only for them to decide to air the uncut version of Fire Ant, which includes a 10-minute scene of Space Ghost following an ant. And if that wasn't enough, between the episodes airing, they animated outtakes from George Lowe and C. Martin Croker as their respective characters in the voice booth doing the line reads themselves, and I love that. Admittedly, this one's a little iffy on the prank scale, and the Perfect Hair Forever bit does knock it down a few points for me. But in the end, I absolutely adore this prank. Bias aside, I think this is just an amazing celebration of a show that played an integral part in the foundation of Adult Swim. And I sure as hell can appreciate that.
What about Dick? We can get away with Dick, can't we? We can't say Dick? I thought we were Adult Swim. Who's in charge of these rules? How about penis? Can we say penis?
I had mentioned earlier that Adult Swim Streams was one of their biggest online ventures, and what was undoubtedly the crown jewel of their streams lineup was Fish Center Live. To give you an idea, every weekday, there would be an hour-long stream on Adult Swim's site with the camera focused on a fish tank with all the fish just swimming around. Meanwhile, the host would narrate over the footage, talking about the current events and telling stories and just hanging out. They even had a number to call into that would allow you to speak with the host live during the show. And every so often, they would host games and competitions for the viewers starring the fish. And the most popular game they had was called Coin Hunt. In it, they superimposed images of coins onto the screen, all with different values, and the fish have to try and collect them by hovering over the coins. The fish who gets the most points at the end wins that round, all while the hosts offer a play-by-play of what's going on. I know that might sound stupid on paper, but in execution, it's actually quite fascinating, especially when you get to know the fish that you've been watching. So why am I bringing that up? Well, for their 2015 stunt, they decided to bring the coin hunt to the old boob tube. Except instead of having fish play the game, they had the main characters from Aqua Teen play. From midnight to 6 a.m., they had an Aqua Teen marathon with coins randomly superimposed for each episode. At the end of each episode, they had a tally showing the scores for each of the characters in the current round, as well as the overall score, with the winning character being crowned at the end of the night. If it was just this, then I'd say that, while a neat idea and concept, this is one of their lamer pranks to date. However, there's a complete other side to the prank. In addition to what was being shown on screen, the viewers were led to the Adult Swim site to watch the live stream from midnight to 6 AM, where the host would be live commentating on all the gameplay being shown on TV. This is also where the winner of the game would be crowned. At the end of it all, Master Shake was crowned the winner, with a staggering lead over second place Frylock, and the crowning ceremony took place shortly after. And let me tell ya, it truly brought a tear to my eye. This one's a little bit hard to judge. Fish Center Live started in 2015, so at the point this stunt aired, it had nowhere near the same recognition that it has today. A lot of people were probably confused as to what was going on and why this was the prank, and I can kind of understand their disappointment. On the opposite side of the spectrum, this was a great way to introduce people to Fish Center Live. It definitely made a name for itself with this. And honestly, I really have to commend the team behind the stream for their dedication. This normally hour-long live stream went on for 6 times the usual length, and in the dead of night no less. This is 6 consecutive hours, mind you, no breaks in between, and they even had their normal daily 4 PM streams the day before and after as well. And that's true dedication to the craft for what I can assume probably didn't earn them much in the revenue department. Gonna put it under Mustaches, but still a very good prank. And hey, it's better than nothing. "2016 was already off to a strange start, with them airing bumps promoting this year's stunt on March 31st. Hours before the stunt was even supposed to take place. These basically consisted of them highlighting the previous year's pranks while hyping up whatever 2016 had in store. Despite them literally never doing this before, I wouldn't say it's completely out of nowhere. At this point, they've been doing it for over 10 years, so they've kind of gained a reputation. People know to tune into Adult Swim at midnight to see what it will pull off next, and they might just want to capitalize on that. So midnight rolls around on March 31st, 2016, and the hype that they build up turns out to be a totally normal schedule with absolutely nothing changed. In other words, you get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir! In all honesty, it is just kind of funny that they don't do anything on one of the hypest days of the year for them. Still though, it is nothing. Well hey, it's better than surprise pilots. 'That's right, for the first time in 10 years, we have another double whammy on our hands. For the first night of pranks, starting at midnight on March 31st and going until 6 AM, all of the normal scheduled episodes aired that night with strange audio mixing replacing the original mixing.
Hello, I'm Ignignot, and this is What are your references?
This included things like adding a studio audience laugh track, Seinfeld-esque music stings, pitch changers on voices, and voice modulators, to name a few. That's really all there was to this prank. There's not a lot else to say. That's not to say I didn't like it, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. It harkens back to the 2006 fart prank, where it's sort of like if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it, and if you are, then you'll question what you just watched. I also like how this affected not only their original shows, but also the Fox shows they were airing, like Bob's Burgers and Family Guy, which hasn't been the case since the fart prank over 10 years earlier. All in all, it's a very solid low-key prank, all things considered. For their second night stunt, Adult Swim pulled out their trump card, Rick and Morty. The show had reached peak popularity at the time, and there was still no confirmation as to what was going to happen with the show after season 2, and that left a lot of fans upset, especially since the second season ended on a cliffhanger. Well, Adult Swim chose to ease those fans' eagerness by preempting the whole entire block of programming from 8 PM to midnight with the season 3 premiere on loop, with them announcing that the remainder of the season would premiere in summer of 2017. I don't know how many of you remember this, but this was kind of a huge deal. For starters, the premiere episode just aired out of nowhere for all of our viewing eyes, concluding all of the finale's loose ends in one of the best episodes of the show to date. This also meant that the third season was not only confirmed, but coming very soon, and that's exactly what the fans needed to hear at this time of unease. Truly, this was one of the best pranks that they had pulled off to date. And now, 6 years later, I'm going to tell you why I don't like this prank. At the moment, it seemed like one of the coolest things for Adult Swim to do, and in fairness, this is a very special way to basically announce that the show has been renewed for a third season. But like, besides the episodes airing over and over and over again the whole night, there really was nothing else. No bumps, no jokes, no gags, it was just the episode. They've done sneak peeks before and will do them again later, but those always had something, literally anything else, to indicate its prank status. In hindsight, it's a very disappointing prank, though I can understand why it was so hyped. But still, even back then, I was actually more than a little ticked off with one thing they pulled off that night. See, April 1st that year fell on a Saturday, and Saturdays from 11 to 3:30 a.m. in 2017 were relegated specifically for Toonami. I mentioned this before, but I'm not much of an anime fan myself, so I never really minded that the Rick and Morty prank ate up the 11 to 12 slot of Toonami. Except for the fact that the 11 p.m. slot in 2017 was for Samurai Jack Season 5, something that I and many other fans were extremely hyped for. So imagine our disappointment when the episode, one that was promoted and scheduled for this night, didn't actually end up airing, and instead was pushed back another week. It may not seem like a big deal, but you have to remember that Samurai Jack fans waited 13 years for this conclusion, only for the funny Wubba Lubba Dub Dub man to take preference. Definitely one of the worst executed pranks for that alone, don't even at me. Only 1 year later, and we already have another double whammy. The latest one at this point in time. The first night this time falls on a Saturday, which means that it's during Toonami. Luckily, instead of ignoring that fact like they did the prior year, this year they took the idea of Toonami on April Fools and ran with it, in what I think is one of the more underappreciated pranks. From day one, Toonami has aired all of its anime utilizing English dubs. For their 2018 prank, they decided to flip the script. Starting at midnight, everything that they were airing was in Japanese with English subtitles. Even the bumpers with Tom and Sarah were in Japanese, with different voice actors too. Hell, they did a game review of Nier Automata that night, and not only was that also in Japanese, but the game's audio itself was in Japanese too. They were really dedicated to the bit, and I absolutely respect it. That's not all, however, as there were two special events for the lineup that night. The first one being an episode of Fooly Cooly Alternative, which is kind of insane given that Fooly Cooly Progressive hadn't even started airing yet. And right after that, they aired the 2004 Japanese animated movie Mind Game, accompanied by English subtitles. These were both extremely unique and awesome additions to the lineup, but what I think is really important is that they had the foresight to not preempt any of the new episodes that were premiering that night, and instead extend the block until 6 a.m. to allow the other episodes to air. I can really appreciate how, while this is indeed supposed to be a prank, they understood and valued the respect of Toonami fans out there to allow them to watch the shows they were waiting for. Granted, the episodes were subbed versions instead of the dubbed versions, but at least they were still available. And they even re-aired all the new episodes that they had aired as subs that night a week later as their intended dub versions, including the Nier Automata game review. While I'm not the biggest Toonami or anime fan as a whole, I cannot deny the genius of the simplicity of this prank that gave fans extra goodies while also being respectful to their time and patience. They really learned their lesson from the previous year.
The second 2018 joke didn't air until 11 p.m., giving the night enough time to seem like there was only going to be one joke. But at 11 p.m., we got Bushworld Adventures. Bushworld Adventures was a surreal parody of the animated show Rick and Morty. The story of Bushworld Adventures follows Bushworld Rick and Morty, who go on a road trip to Bendigo to get Rick's green cube. They face off against bush wizards, giant humans, and gas station attendants, until they eventually get to Bendigo and discover that neither of them actually know why they are there. Bushworld Adventures is what Rick and Morty would be if it aired like 5 years earlier on Adult Swim. It's absurdist, it's hilariously quotable, it's purposefully a little bit ugly. Bushworld Adventures was created by Michael Cusack, who later would get his own show on Adult Swim. And then another one. YOLO Crystal Fantasy and Smiling Friends are heralded as inventively hilarious celebrations of internet animation. I mean, Bushworld itself would return in the first season of YOLO. The main joke of this special, aside from the constant array of insane shit that happens, is its Australian influence. And YOLO is incredibly similar. Not as overt as Koala Man, but it's still noticeable. While Bushworld in YOLO is very different, we do see the return of Uncle Barry, the giant human man who transformed into a ute after suffering from dementia and getting killed by Bushworld Rick. People prop up Smiling Friends as Adult Swim's first big celebration of internet animation, and while it is a love letter to those same people, it wasn't the first. Bushworld Adventures was created and voiced by Michael Cusack, but he didn't do it alone. Nearly every cut in the special cuts to a different animation style. That's because it was animated by 24 different individuals with the help of Studio Yada. The talent in this special alone is insane. It's very reminiscent of those multi-animator projects people on YouTube make. By the way, part of the joke is that this special was looped 3 times that night. This special short was also simulcasted on a loop in a marathon stream on AdultSwim.com all night. Here's a tip for you guys. Whenever you see a rotoscoped bit in Smiling Friends, it was probably sick animation. But that's enough about Smiling Friends, at least for me. I got a feeling you guys will hear more about them very soon.
In 2019, starting at midnight on March 31st and ending at around 6 a.m., a new program aired its first season in its entirety, called Game Setsu Machu Picchu. I actually really don't know how to explain Game Setsu Machu Picchu. It's kind of something you have to experience for yourself. The best way I can describe it is like a parody of a mystic anime revolving around becoming the ultimate tennis pro, I think? I kind of had a hard time following the show sometimes, but that's kind of the point. Besides the marathon being live on TV, it was also simulcast on the Adult Swim site with a live chat with the cast and crew of the show in the comments. When the marathon ended, there was also a Q&A with Max Simone, the creator of the show and one of the hosts of Fish Enter Live. I can really appreciate the amount of fan interaction with this prank in particular. It was really interesting to learn what went into making the show what it was. Apparently, the show originated as shorts from one of Max's other Adult Swim live stream shows, Blood Feast, and that he and his team were able to make the entire first season within 6 to 7 months. You might scoff at this by taking a look at the show from a face value with the relatively stilted looking animation, but it's still very impressive, especially given that they're able to switch up art styles so many times during the season. I'd probably rank it higher if I was a fan of Game Setsu, but I do enjoy Max and his other works, and I appreciate the fact that they just dropped the whole season in one night and had something wrapping it together to make it feel more like a stunt. Man, 2018 and 19's pranks really outstaged 2017's Rick and Morty stunt in nearly every way. Spoiler alert, but they're about to do it again. 2020's stunt was probably one of the most hyped up stunts that they've had at the time, and even looking back, I gotta say, I think that the hype totally paid off. This stunt basically boils down to a night of sneak peeks of upcoming new seasons of shows and pilots that was all hosted by Post Malone. It's very akin to the 08 stunt, except instead of Robert Osborne, you got Post Malone and some of the trippiest and chillest wraparound bumps to date, like playing beer pong and hosting Coast to Coast. It's strange too, because they teased us with it being another season of Game Setsu before cutting it to just Post in the Weed Room, while also confirming that a new season was coming out later that year. We also got the premiere of a new Rick and Morty short called Samurai and Shogun, followed by a trailer for Season 4B also later that year. The new episodes of returning shows that they showed off included Primal, Dream Corp LLC, Tigtone, Shivering Truth, Robot Chicken, Laser Wolf, Tender Touches, and the return of the king, 12-Ounce Mouse. There were also some pilot premieres of YOLO Crystal Fantasy, J.J. Villard's Fairy Tales, and of course, Smiling Friends. All in all, a very solid lineup to the stunt. To add a little extra uniqueness to the block, not only did they hide Post Malone and cameos to some of the episodes that aired that night, but much like the 2015 prank, there was also a Fish Center Live supplement to this prank where viewers could call in and discuss the prank live with the hosts. Compared to the 2008 stunt, this is definitely a step up in terms of the prank presentation, and I love the fact that Post Malone is now canon in the 12-ounce mouse universe.
On April Fool's Day 2021, Adult Swim became Adult Swim Junior, a kids block, which was presumably a playful dig at the forthcoming Cartoon Network preschool block, Cartoonito. The bumpers and even some of the shows featured that night were redubbed using children's voices with adult language substituted for more child-friendly vocabulary.
Why don't you do us both a favor and pull the trigger? Do it, Mother Scrubber! Pull the scrubbing trigger!
Numerous Adult Swim properties underwent a childlike reanimation for the bumpers that debuted on that particular night, and these included Space Kid Crib to Crib, Metalocalypse Babies, Super Juvie, Aqua Child Hunger Force, 2-Ounce Mouse, Harvey Birdman Jr. Associate, Kid Billies, Laser Pups, Baby Boondocks, Bouncy Ball Masters, Children's Hospital, this time, The Doctors Are Children, Tim and Eric Awesome Youth's Great Bath, The Eric Andre Naptime Show, Rick and Morty Babies, The Venture Nephews, and Gemaceto Machu Preschool. During the Adult Swim Junior event, only 2 shows, namely Rick and Morty and Aqua Teen, were given the dub treatment, specifically the episodes Total Recall and Revenge of the Moonanites. Child voice actors and actresses fully redubbed the episodes, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys, they're pretty funny. I mean, there's just something hilarious about hearing Frylock speak with a child's voice.
I do not want to do anything illegal here, but I would slap somebody in front of their own mama to get a 10 speed.
This is definitely another one of my personal favorite pranks, although I kinda wish that the network went all out and redubbed every single series that aired on that particular night. But hey, a man can dream, right? Anyways, thanks for having me on the video, Dan. I really appreciate it.
Remember earlier when I talked about internet animation? As of the last couple years, April Fool's Day isn't the only day we get new special programming on Adult Swim. Halloween 2020, we got Jack Stauber's new musical stop-motion short film, Opal, which is absolutely fantastic. It's also on YouTube. Halloween 2022, we got a new Lee Hardcastle Rick and Morty claymation short, and this was the first to be announced ahead of time. They were building up to it. But late October 2021, we got Come and Learn with Pibby, a short fake trailer about a glitchy mess invading cartoon worlds and turning its inhabitants into terrifying zombified creatures. What makes it all the more unsettling is its characters you know. As of writing this, the short on YouTube has amassed 30 million views. Now, I'm of the opinion that it was never meant to be a series and it was just going to be a Halloween short, despite what those 4chan leaks, be sure to put leaks in quotation marks, said. But after seeing how popular this idea got, Adult Swim changed their tune. So we got 5 months of speculation and Friday Night Funkin' maps. That was until midnight, April 1st, where she returned. The night starts with the beginning of the original Come and Learn with Pibby short until the glitch teleports Pibby and Bun Bun to the world of Rick and Morty. And yet again, it's the Season 2 episode Total Recall. The episode goes on as normal. We occasionally hear faint screaming or glitch sounds, but nothing major. Pibby and Bun Bun can be seen hidden in the Where's Waldo shot, but things get crazier after we cut back from commercial. In the scene where Rick is dragged into the garage and almost executed by Morty, the glitch peers in. Morty's eyes go white and his jaw cracks in an inhuman manner. He gurgles like the final cries of a dying man as the glitch overtakes him and unhinges his jaw like a snake. Then it cuts back and everything's fine. We don't see Pibby and Bun Bun again until the very end, where the credits glitch a little bit. Pibby and Bun Bun walk over the credits and theorize that all this horrifying and confusing stuff that just transpired is probably just a Halloween episode, potentially referencing their origin as the previous year's Halloween special. Next, we get the episode of Smiling Friends, Charlie Dies and Doesn't Come Back. Pibby and Bun Bun walk through frozen over hell behind Charlie while the terrain starts to glitch out. Even the commercials aren't safe, as the glitches and dark versions of characters seep into the iconic Adult Swim bumpers. Eric Andre glitches out as someone shoots Hannibal. Pibby and a now glitched out Bun Bun stand backstage, with Pibby shocked by this act of violence. She's probably wondering herself who killed Hannibal. After the Eric Andre show, we see what looks like a normal landscape bump until Pibby climbs on screen and begs the audience to do something. Anything. The Aqua TV show episode Muscles is up next. Glitchy Bun Bun walks around outside the Aqua Teen house as Master Shake's new muscular body glitches out and becomes hyper-realistic for a spell. Later, outside Opossums, Pibby chases down the glitched out Bun Bun as Master Shake's muscles beat up everyone inside. We see them in Bird Girl for a bit, but then we get a completely uninterrupted, normal episode of Joe Para. That is until the credits play and Pibby, now all alone and defeated, slowly walks across the screen, freezing and crying. And that is the last time we've seen Pibby. So far, Pibby and Bun Bun did appear on a couple of billboards, and they took over Adult Swim's hub on HBO Max on April Fools, but that's all we got right now. It's worth noting that 2022 was the first year the Adult Swim April Fools broadcast was also streamed on YouTube, and I really hope they do this going forward. I've been one of your many swimmers. I'm gonna keep pushing that until it becomes a thing. Everyone comment, I'm a swimmer, down below. BHultra, thanks for having me, the Dan.
And with that, we're finally caught up to this year's prank, and just in time too, it's about to start any second now. Before that though, I just wanted to thank you all for watching, and just know that honestly, no matter where the prank ended up on this ranking, they all have a special place in my heart. There is a reason why this has turned into a tradition for myself and so many others, and I cannot wait to see where it goes from here. Speaking of which, it's about time to get this party started. Oh yeah, I don't have cable anymore.